Hey guys, this is David at Finish Line Factory, and this is a video that I've been wanting to make for a while. This is my Ecoboost Mustang. So I've had this car for a little over 3 years. It's a lease. I've only got like a week left with the car, so I just wanted to make a quick video going over the interior, the exterior of the car, why I chose the Mustang, how I configured it, and why I chose that configuration. So let's hop in and check it out. Alright guys, so a little bit about the history of this car and why I went with the Mustang. So I spent like 7 months just deciding what car I wanted. I was looking at Audis and BMWs. Pretty much anything south of like $60,000 was fair game. So, you know, I was like, well, I want something fast, 300 horsepower-ish, rear-wheel drive, something fun and sporty, moddable if possible. So I was looking at things like the Audi S3 or the BMW 435i. And they were good cars, but some of them were kind of expensive, and I was like, well, I'm not sure what I really want to get, you know. I kind of decided on a 435i. I felt like the 435 had a great balance of performance, luxury, comfort. It's a great car. The problem with BMW is that every single BMW dealership, with the exception of perhaps Delray BMW, they've given me a good experience. Every single BMW dealership has given me a bad experience in some way. Vista BMW, Fort Lauderdale BMW, Bremen BMW in West Palm. Well, Bremen BMW in Miami, they were okay. South Motors BMW in Miami, they're all just terrible. So, you know, my concern was that if I had an issue with the car, in general, their sales experience just kind of sucks. A lot of them just kind of blew me off as if I couldn't afford the car. And I'm like, I'm here to buy a car. I'm not here to screw around, you know? So I decided, you know what? Let me do some more research. And I found out, I was looking at other cars, I looked at the Mustang, and I figured, you know what? This car, when you option it out, has almost all of the same available options as the 435i. You can option it with adaptive cruise control, like a 435i. It's got 300 horsepower rear-wheel drive, like a 435i. Now, granted, the 435 is underrated, so it's got a little bit more power. But you know what? This was adequate. So what I decided to do instead of going through all that problem and, you know, trying to figure it out, is just buy the Mustang. So then I spent a few more months looking for the Mustang that I wanted. I went to different dealer lots, and none of them had all of the options that I wanted. I wanted one with the performance package, adaptive cruise control, and the premium package, which is pretty much almost every option with the exception of Recaro seats and automatic transmission, right? So at some point I realized, in order to get the car that I want, I'm gonna have to order it. I'm gonna have to factory order the car. And then I went to Delray Ford in Delray Beach and talked to the salesman. His name was Alex, and I said, hey, I want to order a car. I've decided I want this car, and let's do it. So we did it, placed the order, and on their next round of 2016 Mustangs, they ordered one in the configuration that I wanted. Oxford white with the dark saddle brown interior. That looks nice. So 2 months later, car shows up. I sign the papers, and within a few hours, I'm actually driving the car to work, and that's how I got the car. And you know what? I love the styling on this car. It's like retro, but it's also like modern and kind of European in its styling. And it's just so, like, every angle you look at it, it's just slick and beautiful, you know. Performance package, you get the black wheels, 5-spoke 19-inch wheels with 255 tires up front and in rear, as well as you get the 4-piston brakes from the GT. You basically get the GT's brakes with the performance package. Now, if you have a GT and you get the performance package, you get 6-piston Brembos. What else do you get with the performance package? Exterior-wise, there's really not much different with the performance package other than the wheels. Now, when you have an Ecoboost, this is how you can tell if you're an Ecoboost. If you see this badge, the Mustang badge, it's an Ecoboost. If you see a Mustang with the stripe through it, it's a V6. And if you see a GT, then it's a GT. So, yeah, that's the exterior. It's got the beautiful sequential lights that light up when you're going through your turn signal. Let's pop the hood and see what that looks like. So this being the Ecoboost, all right. This being the Ecoboost, there is a ton of space in the engine bay. I mean, there is seriously a ton of space. Hang on a second. All right, so the engine bay is a little dirty. Honestly, I don't really have much reason to go into here much because it's all stock. And I really don't have any desire to modify it, both because it's a lease, and honestly, I find that the stock power to be adequate. It's fine. I don't need much more. So look how much space you've got in this engine bay. I mean, really, this is an engine bay designed for a big V8. So when you put this small 4-cylinder in there, it just makes everything just so small. You have so much space to work on, you know? You want to put an intake? Sure, there you go. By the way, the intake is a factory cold air. It's already pulling from behind the headlight. So it pulls in that way, into the intake, and into the turbo. Speaking of the turbo, check this out. Look at how much space you've got to put a bigger turbo. And look how small it is. That's the turbine housing. That's the compressor housing. It's just this tiny, tiny turbo. So I believe Precision makes factory drop-in, bolt-in upgrade kits, so you don't have to mess with all kinds of adapters or whatever. One more thing, the manifold for the turbo is built into the head. If you see there, the turbo bolts directly to the head. So that way you get the shortest path to the turbo. Really helps to improve response. Working on this car is super easy. I mean, look, you've got the downpipe right there, and you just have all this space to work on the car. Honestly, this was just made to be tinkered with. Now, the stock performance, it's got 310 horsepower, which is really, really good. Pulls on the car really well, and because the tiny turbo, the boost comes on really soon and really gives you a lot of low-end torque. But it's not perfect. So the problem with this car is that the factory intercooler, believe it or not, is inadequate for the stock boost. So the car runs about 20 pounds of boost stock, and the problem is that as you're going through the gears, I think someone did a test, and by the time you're in 4th gear, the intercooler is putting out, like, the air coming out of the intercooler is 240 degrees. Like, honestly, what are you gonna do with that, you know? It just heat soaks because it's just too small. If you were going through the same test with an aftermarket intercooler, I think they found it was like 140 degrees. So the problem is that when you're on track, whether you're drag racing, whether you're on the road course, you don't have 300 horsepower. By the time you've gone through a few pulls, you've really got like 200, 250 horsepower because the ECU is tuned to add a lot of fuel and pull a lot of timing in order to protect the engine, because, you know, you're pumping 240 degree air into the engine. So that's no bueno. All right, so check this out. This car has keyless entry, so you can literally just tap that and it's unlocked, hit that, and it's locked. Cool, huh? So, door's unlocked. I don't have to take the key out of my pocket at all. And honestly, I feel like for $35,000, which was the MSRP of my car as configured, it's honestly an amazing value. You know, you can't beat this car. So we've also got keyless start. Starts right up. Check the AC off so you don't get overblown. Turn the radio off. You got memory seats. They're power. Now, it's only power bottom and tilt. If you want to move the seat back, it's still manual, which is kind of whack, but whatever, you know. We have automatic lights, automatic wipers, which is a part of the package with the adaptive cruise control. So that's how you know you have adaptive cruise control. We have this selection here, this button for range. We got volume. Got the phone controls here. You can also talk to it with sync. Hit that button and you can tell it to do certain things. Also, you know what, let's close the door. It's actually getting kind of hot. Take the AC on. So you also have this information screen. Let me zoom in on that a little bit. It tells you different information. You've got the gauge mode, and literally tells you your air-fuel ratio. What other car tells you your air-fuel ratio? I mean, come on. Cylinder head temperature. This is really useful when you're on track because, you know, sometimes the car could be overheating, and, you know, it'd be good to know that the car is overheating, because honestly, that little gauge that's there, this one right here, is useless. It stays in the middle until you're overheating, so, you know, worthless. Oil temperature. It'll tell you your actual individual tire temperature. That's very useful. A lot of cars have that now. Trip meter, it tells you your fuel mileage. You have 2, stuff like that. Track apps. So you can have your accelerometer, like a G meter, acceleration timer, so you can time your 0 to 60, brake performance, your lap timer, which is kind of useful. I've never actually used it. Well, I think I used it a couple of times. And yeah, driver assist. This is where you can change your settings for the collision warning, cruise control, blind spot, hill start, stuff like that. Hill start, this car will actually hold the brake for you. They'll use the ABS system to hold the brake, so that way you don't roll backward, because it's a, you know, it's a stick manual transmission. And then settings, you can change different things. You can actually change the color of the gauges if you want, so you have it white or purple or blue, which is nice. Right now I have it set to green. You can also set the ambient lights. So right here I've kind of got a Christmas theme going on, so you can change that color. So you can have it be orange or blue or purple. So let's put that back in red. And yeah, so this car also has the awesome Ford Sync system. So this is their touchscreen system. And honestly, it's fantastic. It works very, very well. Let me get this microphone cable out of the way. Works very, very well. No hiccups. Occasionally, I have experienced it kind of crash once in a while, but you just turn the car off and on. It's fine, you know. It's very rare that it happens. Yeah, you can go here. You got their AM, FM, play music off of your phone. You know, stuff like that. Get different presets. Very useful, very user-friendly, very intuitive. Down here you've got your climate controls and your settings for your drive settings. Engine start stop, emergency, your hazard lights, your traction control, steering feel, so you can switch between comfort, normal, sport. I usually just keep it in comfort unless I'm, you know, doing something sporty. Drive mode, so you can have between normal, sport, track, and snow, which I never use here in Florida. And what's nice is that in track mode, it will disable the automatic emergency braking and collision warning, so you don't have to worry about that. Very useful. Here you've got your climate control settings. You got your basic climate control settings here, but for some of the more advanced stuff, you can go through this menu here. Let's see, phone. Go through your phone. You'll read your text messages, stuff like that. Apps and settings. So you can change different stuff. This system actually has Wi-Fi, and you can actually update the software by itself, which is pretty nifty. What else we have? Voice control, valet mode, nifty stuff. So anyway, I got the GoPro set up here. Let's take it for a drive. So I've had this car for a little over 3 years, so that's completely stock. The only thing I've changed are the brake pads. Getting kind of out of spec there. All right. The only thing I've changed are the brake pads, because honestly, the factory brake pads, they kind of suck. The factory brake pads suck. The reason I say that is because, well, they're really intended for like a street use. So low dust, low noise, you know, that kind of thing. And when you're on track with them, or if you're doing a lot of very spirited driving, they tend to overheat and you just burn through them very quickly. So first thing you do, get a good set of, I've actually used Power Stop Z26s, and they're okay, they're good on track. All right. So the power is pretty good. Let me give you guys a run. And the handling's pretty good too. I mean, honestly. Braking is excellent. It's really easy to heel toe this car. So the stock power is adequate. Like, I don't really feel like I really want a lot more. Once you've gone through a few gears, you really start to feel the decrease in performance as the intercooler heats up, and you go from that strong pull from 300 horsepower down to this kind of weak pull because it pulls a lot of torque out. But the car is extremely comfortable. The ride is a little firm, just a little bit. Not like, oh my god, this is killing my back, but just kind of, you know, reminding you that you're in a sports car. This isn't a luxury car, but it's comfortable. You go over bumps and it's not going to destroy your back. Like, especially like if you have coilovers, that'll just kill you, you know. With regards to fit and finish, everything is in like a good location. Nothing's like starts rattling. Nothing has been falling apart like some cars. Like, for example, I got into a brand new Chevy Tahoe. If you touch any part of the interior, everything creaks. It's terrible. This car, everything is still tight. Everything's still solid. Nothing's falling apart. Nothing is broken. Well, I had one issue, and that was that the fuel vapor valve or something like that, that broke. That was a $30 part. The dealer wanted like $300, and I was like, no, you know what? I can replace it for myself. It was 1 bolt, 2 hoses on top of the engine. Easy. Took 5 minutes. Other than that, this car's been very reliable. It's never left me stranded. I've never had a single problem with the car. So all you people that say, oh, well, Ford is terrible, it's, you know, here I am 3 years later, issue free. So there you go. I haven't had any issues with the transmission. I know that some people, especially with the older S197, they've had issues where it'll lock them out of like 3rd gear or something. I haven't experienced that. I've always been able to get into every gear. Also, the handling on this car is very precise. I know that a lot of people think that the steering feel or whatever, or Mustangs handle terribly. Honestly, it's fine. I don't have any problems. I've tracked the car. I've taken corners pretty fast. I ran like a 136 at PBR, which is a decent time. I think if I could have more consistent power, I could probably knock that down to a 134. But it's fine. I haven't had any issues with suspension. The handling is decent. Just make sure you got some decent tires. A lot of people they think they can cheap out on tires, but you can't cheap out on the part that touches the road. You got to get some good sticky stuff. You know, the only thing that kind of sucks, I guess for first timers, the clutch is a little weird. Speaking of the clutch, there's this kind of odd feature that kind of blows people's minds when I show it to them. The ECU will automatically and gradually apply the throttle when you lift up on the clutch. So let me just stop for a second. Now, I don't feel like taking the camera off the mount, so I'm just going to do this manually. Okay, so right now the engine is idling at 750 RPM. I'm going to put the clutch in. Immediately jumps up to 1,000 RPM. And I'm going to have my foot back here. You can't see it, but whatever. And it's just automatically applying the gas for me. It didn't stall. Now, if you dump the clutch, you're going to stall. But I think it's a useful feature, especially for people that are just getting into learning how to drive manual. Really helps to ease the transition from automatic to manual. Another thing that's awesome about this car is the traction control system. Now, I know that not a lot of people are going to rave about the stability control system or traction control system, but hear me out. On the old Mustang, the S197, I had one as a rental for like a week. You know, the traction control system honestly was more likely to make you crash than it was to save you. So I was making a left turn. It was kind of a rainy day, and the rear end kicked out. And I'm like, okay, I know what to do. Counter steer, continue applying a little bit of throttle, and bring the car back in line. Instead, the car cuts power and starts doing some stuff with the braking system. And now, instead of me correcting the car is trying to correct itself, in addition to me trying to correct the car, and I almost hit the median. I almost hit the curb in a rental car. Thankfully, I was able to keep it together and get the car going, but the traction control system on the S197 is just awful. In addition, on the S197, the suspension in general is awful. Because, yes, it can perform as well as an M3 on paper, but feeling-wise, it doesn't give you the feeling that it can. It almost feels like it's kind of sketchy. You know, like we've entrusted 420 horsepower to a live axle suspension, and the whole time, I don't know what it is, but even with the suspension, even with the performance suspension from Ford, that option, it still feels a little sketchy, you know? So, hopping back on the highway here. About to overtake this 911. Oh, it's a Carrera GTS Cabrio. Look at that, gone. Okay, it was on the street, but you know, he wasn't racing, but whatever. The suspension on the S197, being that this is the first Mustang with production non-special Mustang. I know the Terminator Cobra had independent rear suspension. This is the first regular production Mustang to have independent rear suspension, and the handling is just superb. Feels very precise. If I want to induce oversteer, you can. Drifting this car is a little weird, like if you want to legitimately drift it, because I don't know, the steering doesn't seem to want to like throw itself to the other side, so you have to kind of manually counter steer. You can't just whip the wheel. So that is a little weird, and that's probably, if you look at Chelsea Denofa's car, you notice that the wheels are super far forward. I think he does that to give himself a shitload of extra caster to force the wheel to do that. So, you know, fun fact. I think this kind of concludes my review. I would get in the back seats, but you know the deal. They're useless. So this concludes my review. Thank you for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe if you want to see more content. If you have any questions, you know, leave a comment. I've had this car for 3 years. If you'd ask me if I do it again, I would tell you that I would buy the GT. The Ecoboost Mustang is great. Having the power is great, but if I didn't already have the 240, I would have just bought the GT. So, yeah. And honestly, if I had the GT, I would probably keep the car instead of leasing it and returning it in a week. So, thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you later. See ya. Bye.